rolling encyclopedia.
Dude, this bike is quick. What do we got going on here?
You guys wanted me to ride an Indian Scout, compare it to the Sportster S, and here it is. Huge shout out to Whole Shot Power Sports here in Jacksonville, Florida, for giving me the opportunity to ride this bike, especially to my man Das. You guys will see him in a little bit, but let's take a quick look at this thing, man. This bike is awesome.
There she is, Indian Scout Rogue. This is a 2024, literally has like 4 or 5 miles on it, so 100% stock.
But what do we come here for? This bike. Made a video about Sportster S, telling you guys about how awesome it was, and somebody wanted me to make a video about how it compared to the Indian Scout Rogue. So that's what I'm here to do. Let's go ride this thing, man.
All right, first 30 seconds on the 2024 Indian Scout. Man, this bike is tight. Everything seems well put together. Everything seems firm. It doesn't seem like there's sloppy or play on anything. Oh man, this turn in is real light. Bike feels smooth. Everything seems tight. The clutch lever is fairly tight, has a little bit of weight to it, which is actually pretty good. It kind of fits the theme of the bike. The brake lever is also fairly tight. It's a hefty brake lever. The same thing with the foot lever. All the inputs on this bike feel fairly hefty. What do we got going on here? Oh man, this thing moves, bro. What? This moves for a cruiser, man. This will keep you entertained. Okay, I see. Indian doing it nice. Honestly, through this little bend here, the bike actually feels light. All right, so when I say everything feels heavy, what you're actually pulling, the clutch lever itself feels heavy, the brake lever itself feels heavy, not in a bad heavy, it's hard to pull type of way, but a firm type of way. Like it's a good level of heft. It doesn't feel cheap and plasticky. It feels sturdy. Sturdy is a better way to put it. Brake, rear brake, awesome. You can lock up the back tire with a little bit of rear brake. That is exactly how I like it.
Single front rotor actually stops the bike very well. I didn't notice that this bike didn't have dual disc. This bike stops well enough for the amount of speed that it gets, and it looks damn good.
We're going 50 miles an hour. Look at that. That is nice. The bike is balanced and nimble. There's a low center of gravity. I do feel like I'm sitting on the bike just because of how low the fuel tank actually is on this bike. But as I'm riding it, it feels like I'm in the bike. So it's strange. Visually, I feel like I'm on it because my knees and the tank are basically at the same level. But since the bars are elevated, my arms are out in front of me, I do feel like I'm in the bike. Back and forth on this thing, man. Honestly, this bike is nimble, man. The underslung mirrors are clear and clear. They do not vibrate. I'm gonna go ahead and pick up some speed a little bit later, and I'll tell you guys exactly how I feel about the movement on them. But as of right now, they're stable, man. I can see exactly what's going on behind me. This bike feels like it's very well put together. I'm impressed. Also, this is the first time that I've ever ridden an Indian product. I'm impressed. Downshifting here. It's a very short throw on the shift lever, but it's confirming. As soon as you get it into gear, you feel it in the bike, you feel it in your foot, you can tell that you're in the right gear. It doesn't leave any ambiguity. It doesn't leave any room for that. When you're in gear, you know it, and you feel it.
So yeah, this bike is actually pretty impressive. Those initial thoughts, I like it. Now, let's go a little bit further. See if it'll keep up with the Sportster S.
You get a little vibration in the bars at the higher RPMs, like you can feel it. So the more revs you give it, the more feel the bike gives back to you. But it's not bothersome. It's not like an amount of vibration that you're gonna be dealing with all the time, because it was at 5,000 RPM. So cruising speed, you don't feel it at all. So it actually goes with the experience. When you want to rev faster, when you want to rev a little bit harder, the bike gives you that feedback where you want it. And right now, 2,800 RPM, 45 miles an hour, fourth gear, I don't feel it. I don't feel anything. And honestly, the mirrors aren't moving. The mirrors aren't moving. The bike is light this turn, kind of picking up a little bit of speed, shift mid-turn. It feels nice. I feel comfortable on this bike immediately. I know what the bike wants to do. I know how it wants to do it. That's awesome. This is a nice light cruiser. Man, just free revving it here. Dude, just free revving it here. That is good. That is nice. For a stock bike, this thing has a nice intake note. This is a stock exhaust, brand new. The bike literally has 3 miles on it. That's impressive. It feels very nice. The throttle itself has a decent bit of weight to it. Yeah, it picks up speed so effortlessly. It doesn't feel like I'm going as fast as I am. Holy crap, man. The torque on this bike is awesome. I think it has right around 100 horsepower and like 80 foot-pounds of torque. I'll go ahead and link it down below. The bike moves effortlessly, man. It really does. I don't feel basically anything from the bike in the seat, which is awesome. The seat itself is like very isolated from what you're doing with the bike. The foot placement isn't bad. I personally wish that it was a little bit farther forward, but honestly, it's not a bad position. My legs actually do have, they're not vertical, they actually are a little bit forward. So it's a matter of personal preference. If you're a little bit taller, it may be too small for you. If you are a little bit shorter, it may be perfect. That comes down to personal preference. Oh man, those downshifts are awesome. I like it, man. I don't find anything that's immediately upsetting. Really, just first off, just taking this thing for a spin, I don't see anything or feel anything on the bike that is upsetting me or that I don't like. I think that the bike's well put together. Personally, I like a physical RPM gauge. I like seeing the RPM needles move, but that is a personal preference. So honestly, not a big deal. A lot of the times with these electronic throttles, I think that they feel plasticky, and then I think that a cable throttle always feels a little bit better. But honestly, this one feels very receptive to my actual inputs. I think it's a solid throttle pull, and I fully understand that moving forward, no bikes are really going to come with cable throttles. So, you know, that's just me kind of bitching about stuff, but this is a good one. Honestly, I felt a lot worse. That felt cheap and plasticky. This doesn't feel that way. Spring tension's fairly nice. Low speed, keeping it under 3,000 RPMs. You get up to speed perfectly fine. Here we are riding in traffic, and the bike is smooth, man. 6th gear, 40 miles an hour, under 2,000 RPMs, and the bike isn't bucking. It doesn't feel lugged. I'll go over here and switch lanes, see if I can speed up. No, I don't feel any sort of lugging at the engine at 2,000 RPMs, which is really, really impressive and great for like cruising.
Other weird thing that I noticed, so this is the frame. It actually covers the radiator. So if you ever do anything dumb and drop the bike, the radiator is actually protected by the frame itself. I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere. Let's really talk about how I feel about this bike compared to the Sportster S.
Now, the main reason I'm making this video is because in the Sportster S video that I made, you guys wanted me to compare this Indian Scout Rogue to the Sportster S. And my honest thought from riding this right here, right now, these are two different bikes for two different markets. If you want the Sportster S, that bike does not compete with this bike on the same level. And not that they're not comparable or that one is better than the other. They are two different categories of bikes. This is a traditional cruiser, a sporty cruiser, but is a traditional cruiser, like a small cruiser. It's not a bagger, but this is a traditional cruiser. The Sportster S is not a traditional cruiser, so I cannot actually compare it to this. Yes, Indian and Harley are competition. The Sportster S is an awesome bike. If you're in the market for a Sportster S, this isn't going to do it for you. If you're in the market for this bike, the Sportster S is not going to do it for you. So you need to identify what kind of rider you are and what kind of ride you want to be on. This bike is more of a traditional cruiser with some power. So it's a light cruiser. Compare it to, for example, my Honda Magna. Like, this would be a good competition for my Honda Magna. Not that that bike is anything close to what this bike is. Obviously, they're like 20 years apart. Over 20 years apart, almost 30 years apart. But for the small cruises, going around town, riding with your friends, taking the bike down to the beach for the weekend because I'm in Florida, this is more for that. I would say the Sportster S is a little bit more of going faster or riding more aggressively in a cruiser package. where this isn't necessarily that. It's fast, but it's not the same level. Like, it's not the same. This doesn't have that aggressive acceleration, but again, it's not supposed to. This is more of a cruiser. Like, the wrong question is, how would you, comparing these two bikes is the wrong thing. Like, I can see somebody having both bikes in their garage and enjoying both of them because they offer different things. Some awesome things that I noticed for this bike from the factory: steel braided brake lines. That is amazing on a factory bike, which is probably why the brake pedal has that really nice feel that it does. The bars, the inputs on the bike are actually fairly light. They're light for a cruiser. A lot of the times when you go to a cruiser, they're a lot more slow back to back. This one actually isn't that bad. This one takes really nicely to the change of direction right there, but you do have to give it that little bit of input, so it's nice. Honestly, this is a good looking bike. I think that it looks amazing. I think that it feels tight. I think that this is a solid bike on its own. I don't think it's a comparison for the Sportster S. Not because one is better than the other. Like I said, I really don't think that you should be comparing the Sportster S and this Indian Scout Rogue. Just being honest with you. Like, I could see myself having both of these bikes in the garage, and they serve their own purpose. This is more of a traditional cruiser with a little bit of power, lightweight, good handling. The Sportster S is that new adventure that doesn't have its own category. It's technically a cruiser, but it doesn't fit into the cruiser category like this bike does. I would say this is traditional. The Sportster's a new modern interpretation of a cruiser. I would like to put a lot more miles on this bike though, to see how it feels over the long term, see how my butt does, because I'm on a short little ride. But just from this bit, man, it feels good. And this is 6th gear pulling. Man, this bike accelerates well. The power delivery on this bike is effortless. Honestly, it just does it. You give it the throttle twist and it goes. It doesn't matter what gear you're in. It doesn't matter what speed you're going. It'll continue to accelerate and it pushes easily. Dude, this is awesome.
A couple cool things that I noticed about this while I was sitting here taking a look. This bike actually has a floating rear rotor, which is not very common. They're usually a solid rear rotor. So that's actually pretty interesting. Special to the Rogue is this little windscreen. Did an awesome job blocking the wind. I didn't feel anything. I got up to about 80 and it was a good clean gust of air. Obviously you felt it from the torso up, but it was a solid clean gust of air. With the rise of these bars, these rear view mirrors are actually pretty solid. When your hands are on them, you can actually see behind you. You can see everything clearly. I don't see a reflection of my arm or my lat through the mirror. When my hands are on the bars, just like this, I can see clean behind me with no obstruction. So they're perfectly placed. The field of view behind you is on point. Did I mention that the kickstand was better than Harley's kickstand?
All right, 30 miles an hour, 2nd gear. Let's give it a rip and see how the power is delivered. Oh yeah! Dude, this bike is quick! Alright, let me let off before I run myself into the back of a Ram. That's impressive. That is impressive. This is fun. That's a good level of power. It's very torquey, so it feels effortless, less pushy, but more just go. I like it. It's actually slower than the Sportster S. It is, but again, you shouldn't be comparing these two freaking bikes, man. They're its own thing. This is a traditional cruiser. All right, so final thoughts, wrapping up. 2024 Indian Scout Rogue. Nice bike. I think it looks awesome. I love the color. I love the fact that Indian doesn't show its savings in all of the inputs. Like the bezel has this, it has a nice little sheen to it. It's painted, the bars are nice. All of this stuff is solid metal. Yeah, there's a little bit of plastic here, but everyone's is actually plastic. The mirrors itself, the actual lever on the mirrors is awesome. They're sturdy. I didn't look, well here, let me get some speed now and check it out. Downshift into 3rd, 3,000 RPMs, get some speed. Woo! Cruising at 80, and the mirrors are actually really solid. I can see fairly clearly out of them. That is impressive. That is actually impressive. I'm fairly impressed. This is a good overall bike. Inputs themselves are firm. The clutch lever, the brake levers, they all feel fairly firm. Probably has to do with the steel braided brake lines, but I like the inputs. It's actually a light bike to go side to side. You can sink in, cruise nice and slow side to side, or It can actually handle a little quick inputs. It's a cruiser, so it's not a sport bike. It doesn't handle it like a sport bike, but it's a fairly good bike. Honestly, I'm glad I came out here to actually ride this bike. It's a solid bike. For my first impressions on the Indian, the first Indian I've ever ridden is this bike. It's a solid bike, man. It's a solid bike. And for a $12,000 price, I think it's worth it. And that kickstand is 1,000,000 times better than a Harley kickstand any day of the week.
All right, so huge shout out to my man Das over here at Whole Shot Power Sports.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Anything you want to tell me?
Honestly, man, come on down. If you've never been around an Indian, this is the place to find out. We do test rides any day of the week as long as there's no rain on the road. I'm happy to walk you through every aspect of this bike. I am a rolling encyclopedia. So whatever you want to know, I'm always on two wheels, whether it's at home on my bike or here on the Segway. Two is the way to go all day long.
Huge shout out.
My dude.
Thank you for the opportunity on
yes,
this.
sir.
Shout out again, Das at Whole Shot Power Sports. Is this Fleming Island or Jacksonville?
This is Fleming Island, yep.
Fleming Island, Florida, not Jacksonville, because I said Jacksonville earlier.
It's all right. Hey, this is the Jacksonville Indian. So you're looking for Indians in Jacksonville, you got to come down to Fleming Island, come see us.
Check this guy out. He's awesome. Peace.